Okay, we've been notified. We can take it away. So I'm Luanne Tierney, Chief Marketing Officer of Betterworks, and my guest today is Tracy Newell, President of Informatica. I'm super excited to be hosting this session with Tracy, since Tracy and I have been longtime colleagues and sometime golf colleagues. That's all I'll say on that. Anyway, looking forward to our session today, and we're going to be talking about how Informatica has been using OKRs to accelerate digital transformation and cultural change. So, Tracy, do you want to take a second and introduce yourself?
Great. Yeah, thanks, Luanne. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you today. As Luanne said, my name is Tracy Newell. I'm President of Informatica, where I'm responsible for sales, marketing, customer success, a long time career in software sales and software technology in the Silicon Valley, and very passionate about today's discussion. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. So I know your journey technically started with the OKRs in March when you bought the Measure What Matters book. But I think you had mentioned you've been thinking about this issue of goals and transformational change and cultural change for a long time. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. And I guess backing up a bit, Informatica, what do? We help customers accelerate their data-driven digital transformation by helping them to harness their data. And we support 85 of the Fortune 100, 40% of the Global 2000. And so as you would expect, as president of the company, I get to talk to a lot of clients. And customers have been telling me for years, they literally use the words, if they've been around for more than 5 or 10 years, they'll say, I've got to disrupt myself before someone else disrupts me. And what they're really saying is there's always disruptors in their market. And so you've got to constantly be changing and evolving to keep up and to stay at the top of your industry. And so compound that, the pandemic hits, and suddenly all of us are virtual. Whether we like it or not, we're virtual. And suddenly we are all trying to understand the new norm. Right? How do we understand what this means to us, and what do I need to do to reimagine and replan? If for those hit with some macroeconomic headwinds, how do I rebound coming out of this? And so to me, OKRs just play right into that. It couldn't be more important to have everybody aligned at all levels with objectives and key results.
I see the book behind you.
Yes, that's for my team. That's not for this call. My team will tell you that book has been sitting there for 9 months.
So I know you were talking about, as we went into the pandemic and at Informatica, you knew you couldn't hop on a plane. You've been managing sales teams successfully for many years, and it's been, goal driven and, hitting your numbers. But now you've got to go to, how do you really create transformational change across an organization? What was your thinking behind that?
Yeah, so again, for everybody's lived through this now, March hits and we're all working from home globally. And yet we're a B2B company, I'm guessing like many on this call, and we're used to meeting with our customers and shaking hands and taking them out to lunch. So we're big on field events. Please, like an event like this, that would have been in person with a couple thousand people in Las Vegas. And so overnight, we had to reinvent ourselves and our thinking with constant innovation. And so to me, the book that is sitting behind me for my team, I guess it's over here, it really resonated with me. So I highly recommend the Audible for anyone who has not spent time in this book, written by John Doerr, Measure What Matters, and I obviously have the hard copy too. But it's all about how companies have used objectives, key results to get 100% alignment. So, I believe everybody comes to work every day wanting to do a good job, but they don't always know what is the CEO, what is the president, what is the C-suite thinking about, what's most important to them. And then certainly if you're an executive in your company, you don't always know what every individual contributor is doing to accelerate your goals. And so when the pandemic hit, again, we're all virtual. In my mind, it was never more important than it was at that time, and it still is now, to make sure we've got 100% alignment, tops down, bottoms up, so that everybody's rowing together to help, our companies differentiate each other.
So you said COVID was the pivotal point. You knew you couldn't get on a plane and tell everyone what the goals were and stuff. How did you get the company to buy into not just using Betterworks, but this strategy of everyone being aligned around, OKRs and stuff?
Yeah, so I started, again, I'm a pretty simple person. I don't read a lot of business books, I will say that. I used to read them all the time. Maybe one a year max, or one every other year. I like this book a lot because I think it's storytelling. John Doerr does a tremendous job at, big companies, how do they drive change, and small startups, like Facebook and Google, how do they drive change? And so I really resonated. So I actually asked my whole team to read the book to get aligned on this, and it met with different levels of excitement, but I stuck to it, and everybody came back and said, this makes total sense, especially given what's going on right now. And so we started with just getting my directs aligned, getting everybody on the same page. Most of my directs immediately then wanted their team to then read the book so that they could get aligned. And as we all started, setting goals, like I started with my objectives first, and then we started doing quite a bit of work to get everybody aligned at the next level down and the next level down. The feedback was quite positive from everybody.
So you had everyone read the book, and then you implemented the Betterworks platform, and then what? Like how? Because it's like, how so many people go, oh, another tool that I have to have. Like, how did that help you align in terms of your goals, and what did you do as a result of that?
Yeah, so it was clear to me, and understanding, because OKRs were new for me and for my organization, it was clear to me that we would need a tool to reinforce that, because everybody comes to work wanting to do the right thing, but you're asking people to work differently is really what this is all about when you talk about driving change. And so I really like the Betterworks platform as an enabler to help every employee stay aligned. But I will also say, 51% of my decision was on software. 49% was also on the company's ability to make us successful, because we all have lots of tools, and the real change happens in figuring out how to get the tool set up correctly and to get the change accelerating. And so we did a ton of work with the customer success team. Reed was amazing at helping. I was actually, again, pleasantly surprised, because I spent a lot of time studying the book and setting up my OKRs. That was actually fairly easy for me. And then, my team chimed in to buy in and to change words. But I found my team was really interested in, well, now how am I going to do this for my organization? So we did a number of workshops where my direct reports were including their direct reports, so that we get this cascading effect that, to me, is most important in getting everybody aligned.
When we already have a question that is in regards to this, it's like, how long did it take to implement the Betterworks tool? How do you set goals while implementing a tool if you need to get it aligned? So,
yeah, that's a great question. So one of my most pleasant surprises was how easy it was to install the tool, right? So our IT team has a lot of projects, probably like every company, and HR has a lot of projects like every company. The installation and implementation of the Betterworks software was one of the easiest I've ever done in 30 years in working in software. I've never seen anything like it. It was just terrific. So the implementation was simple. And then, again, for me, it was pretty straightforward for me to do my objectives as measured by these key results. The real work became, just having my team that report into me, so sales, marketing, and customer success, how do we get them to really kind of interpret this and then align their goals to mine so that we continue to cascade this? And that's where Betterworks did a great job. I think it probably took about 30 days for the teams a couple levels below me to start aligning their results and getting their OKRs in the system. But it was pretty straightforward. It wasn't complicated at all. The harder work was in thinking through what should they be? Like, what do I want my key results to be for, my field marketing team, or for my corporate marketing team, or for my social goals? That was the harder part, is the thinking, which again is a really good checkpoint. If those don't just roll off the tongue, how in the world do you expect someone at the very front line of your organization to be working on the right things, right? It's so important for us as leaders to have, to be super transparent in what we want more than anything else.
Well, this ties exactly to your answer. We're getting a question about, so do you tie your org level goals, your department level OKRs, and individual OKRs? Do they all cascade? I think you just answered that question.
Yeah, but let me chime in, because I think that's a good question. I think that's one of the many reasons we chose Betterworks as a tool, because it does do tops down, but all the way down to the individual contributors. You can't set goals at a CEO or president level or CRO level that are going to apply to every single person in the org. It's not possible, because everyone's got to do something slightly differently. And I also think micromanagement, I probably like everybody on this call, I got over that a long time ago in my career. People don't like to be micromanaged. And so we set goals at my level, and then the marketing team is going to have a different way of executing against those goals than the sales leader will, than the professional services leader will. So everyone understands my goals, and then they interpret what their 3 to 5 objectives will be, and then as measured by key results. And what I really like about OKRs is two things. Well, I like a lot about, but one is they're meant to be aspirational, and we can talk more about that. But to me, great organizations are really trying to exceed, their goals and objectives, not have a layup. So I like that it's aspirational, but I also like that in the spirit of not making it about micromanagement, only 40% of my OKRs will translate down to the person reporting to me and the person reporting to them. And then it can also be personal. Like one of the OKRs I set in the spirit, because I think in this pandemic, everybody's tired of being virtual. Like we're all just so eager to go out to lunch again or celebrate, in person. So one of my OKRs is around health and wellness. And, I'm going to get 10,000 steps a day, and I'm going to be on my Peloton. I don't give my handle to anybody, but I'm going to be on my Peloton at least 3 times a week. Luanne has my handle, but she's the only one.
Tracking your fitness.
But I think it's important, again, as leaders, that we give people permission to take care of themselves and to have some fun in all this. And that ties into my OKR strategy too.
Yeah, and we do that because we use the Betterworks Champagne tool within our company, and we do exactly that. We reward people for having personal goals, making sure it can't all be work, because otherwise it's already feeling like we're on constantly, because now your office is right next to your bedroom, next to the kitchen, so it's important to have those personal goals. And you can also mark some goals private if you don't want the whole company to know about a personal goal. So
yeah, that's good.
Can you talk a little bit about, because you know so much about MBOs versus aspirational goals and OKRs, could you talk a little bit about that, Tracy?
Yeah, so I think we've all worked with MBOs in many times of our career, and I'm guessing many of people on this call will nod their head when you say I'm not such a big fan of MBOs. They pay out at like 95 to 97% in every organization, and that's because MBOs are tied to comp. And so when you tie something to compensation, we're all good people. We want our employees to be able to meet or exceed that objective. And so we tend to set the bar low, lower than what, I believe human beings, and, when you hire the right people, they want to not just do the minimum, they want to meet and exceed and be aspirational with their goals. And so the idea around OKRs is that they are meant to be aspirational. And I would say that's part of change management, because most of our employees are used to MBOs. But this idea that only 70 to 80% of the org will actually hit their objectives and key results I think is a really important one. We've all worked for companies, and we know companies that have really changed the industry and the world that they reside in. And that comes from innovation, and that comes from really setting high stretch targets and giving people permission to stretch. And it's creating a culture where it's okay to fail, right? And because it's not tied to comp, I think that's a key differentiator of OKRs versus MBOs.
Well, this ties to what you just mentioned. We had a question, how many OKRs for a leader is the best limit to manage?
It's a great question. So I would recommend when you're getting started, I'd probably keep less is more. You might start with one. You might start with 2 or 3. I would not have more than 5. I don't know about you all, but I can't remember more than 3 to 5 things. And so less is more for sure. And again, as people start to innovate, you're going to see that they drive change in their MBOs. They won't all be, it's going to vary a bit as it goes down the chain. That's part of the design, as we talked about. But less is more. I encourage people to start with 3 if they can. That's what I've personally done. I created 2 that apply to everybody, and then I've got a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th that apply to specific functions, and that way it keeps it to 3 for the folks that are aligning to what I'm focused on.
We have an interesting question, and you brought up comp in your last response. So it says, when OKRs are not tied to comp, how do you give people clarity on what drives their bonus?
So I'm a big believer. I've spent most of my career in go-to-market, where comp clearly plays a critical function, especially when it comes to sales. And yet I learned it sounds old when I say a couple of decades ago, Luanne. But I don't think comp is the only way to drive change. And I think companies over-rotate on that in a big way. So people, I believe, if you hire the right people, they come to work every day wanting to make a difference. They want to win. We all want to win. And yet they need to know what winning looks like, and you have to provide clarity in that. Now, with that said, there is an element that I like a lot around the Betterworks tool around driving recognition for people that are doing the right thing and that are stepping out. I do think that you can put a piece of compensation, but to me, that's the smaller piece. The bigger focus is on transparency, results, and then rewarding those folks, calling them out when you catch them doing something right.
Well, and that ties to this morning's session with Doug Dennerlein and John Doerr and John Chambers, where they were talking about how cultural change and really creating a shift in your company is the most important thing that matters right now, and keeping everyone connected, motivated, and clear on your goals is such a priority right now. So I would agree. It's not only comp, right? And recognition. We had recognition last week. It was Thanksgiving, and we were doing recognition gratitude week. And everyone, you could just feel the vibe of everyone was so pumped up and felt really great about giving recognition to other people. So agree with that. I did have a question regarding, what kind of results have you seen around since you've embarked on this strategy? I think it's been 6-7 months that you've had the program in place.
Sure. So there's intangible results that are difficult to measure just in getting, I have about 15, 16 direct reports, just in getting everyone aligned on the same page, healthy debate with making sure, is this more important than that? And just getting clarity amongst the leadership team in a way that is measurable and extremely clear. But what I would also add to that, just to your question in the short term, one of the things that we saw with our clients is that because of the pandemic, and sometimes because of macroeconomic headwinds as well, depending on the industry, customers were moving to cloud faster than ever before. And that's a key component to our strategy. We accelerate them moving to cloud. Now, many of you are going, what are you talking about? SaaS and cloud has been around for 10, 15 years. I'm specifically talking about the move to the hyperscaler. So, Snowflake, Google Cloud, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Synapse. Customers are moving their on-premise applications to those hyperscalers faster than before. And that represented a great opportunity for us because we've always helped. But how do we really focus and prioritize sales and marketing and enablement and professional services and support everybody? How do we help our clients do this even faster than they could before? That changed our strategy as a result of what was going on with the pandemic. And so that's an example of where I couldn't be more pleased of the results that we've seen in such a short amount of time, given that transition going on in the market. The second big area change, Luanne, you mentioned it, keeping it real. Some of the teams went, oh God, another tool, like something else I have to do now. And one of the marketing leaders said, no, you understand, this is about setting priorities so that we're all aligned on the top, 3 things within our company so that you can say no to things that aren't quite as important as these priorities, that you can wake up every day really making sure you spend 60, 70, 80% of your time on these critical factors. And as a result, again, our marketing team has been crushing it, with the demand gen, with the pipeline, with the customer reach and accounts-based marketing, all these things that they were important before. Now they were more important because we couldn't go knock on our door and show up in the lobby to meet with the customer anymore. Right? Everything's virtual. So, those are just a couple tangible examples that, the alignment is everything.
Okay. That's great. So we're getting lots and lots of questions. Here's one that says, we're finishing our first quarter of OKRs, and our board will set 3 org level inspirational goals. Then the staff will build OKRs to achieve those. Any wisdom on walking staff through the OKR setting meeting? So I think you had mentioned Reed had helped you through that process, but
yeah, I used the Betterworks team to help you because that was a big component I picked up on immediately. There's always options in the market, but the Betterworks team is focused on making you successful, and it's not about implementing software. Like, the software is important for sure, but step 1 is how do I set these objectives? And again, it's probably clear in your head for the people listening, but for your teams, they're going to go, wait, what? This is new. And it's going to take a while to become muscle memory. So we did a ton of workshops, me with my directs, and then my direct reports with their directs, and one-to-many training and so forth. So I think that's the most important question that was asked, is how do you get your team to really understand it and interpret it and get comfortable setting stretch goals that align to yours, recognizing every function is going to be slightly different. So it's not cut and paste, which I think is the advantage. If you do a cut and paste strategy where everybody has the same goals, it's not going to make sense to somebody in the professional services team versus the product management team. They have different jobs to do. So spend time on getting people to interpret and internalize what this means for them and their role as leaders.
I love that. Interpret and internalize. That's a great quote. I'm going to write that one down. Was there anything that has surprised you during this whole process along the way? As you're using the solution, you're encouraging Informatica to embrace digital transformation.
No, honestly, I think what surprised me the most is how easy it was to roll out and implement and install to the organization. I'm used to very complex, could take 6 months, could take 2 years type of implementations. I think the change management, again, that takes longer for people to get better at this over time. But even, for our phase 1, I was really pleased with how quickly people were able to adopt this, both philosophically and from a tool standpoint.
Okay, so the other question I have for you, and we're getting a lot more, I know you're very passionate about, the CFRs, coaching, feedback, and recognition. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as it ties to, achieving goals?
Yeah, so I think the sun rises and sets on the frontline manager. That person's got one of the harder jobs in the company. They have 80% of the direct reports roll up to that first line leader. And so anything we can do to make that person more productive, more impactful in coaching their team, I think is really important. But let's be real, like to some of the questions coming in, if you're in the front line, as an individual contributor or as that first line leader, there's a lot of noise in the system, right? I mean, it's just, CEO says this, president says that, CRO says this, CMO says this. So by the time it gets down to the individual contributor, it's just probably appears like madness, And so the coaching, feedback, and recognition piece that's built into the software, I think is critical to remind the managers what are they supposed to be doing to help, get their employees accelerating growth for the company, accelerating success for your clients. And so I like it because it's very low touch. It's not, you don't have to write a novel because I don't like that when you make employees, create a bunch of overhead. That's not helpful. But just to say, hey, at the beginning of the quarter, there's a cadence. This is what Tracy said. What are you saying? And then the ability to just remind that manager, check in with your employees. The employees can quickly say, yeah, this is what I've done. And the manager can respond to that. And then if I'm doing a one-on-one with somebody anywhere in the world, I can kind of look at what they've said and kind of ping them once in a while and go, how's that going? How are you doing against that? So it's a nice way of reinforcing what we want people to do without being overly, arduous and top heavy. So it's a really nice balance.
Yeah, we hear a lot that it's in the flow of work and it's easy. It's not this, I got to go in. It's like, it's a reminder to help me be a better manager. So we hear that a lot. So I'm glad to hear you saying that too. So thanks.
Yeah, no, I'm a fan. It's great. It's really good.
We have a great question here. How do you assign ownerships for top-level company KRs? Do you assign an exec member to be accountable for each key result?
Yeah, so again, it's all cascading, right? So as a leadership team, whether this is being done at a CEO level, a CMO, a CRO, obviously you're going to introduce this concept of the people reporting to you, and you're all going to agree on what you think those OKRs are at the highest level, and then they continue to cascade down by function because it will be different by function. And again, the Betterworks team can share a lot too about what they do. Doug Dennerlein, as the CEO, certainly lives and breathes this, and so you set high-level company objectives, but then each team, the product teams, are going to have different goals that align to that.
Great, thanks. Let's see. We're getting so many. How did you get buy-in from the company to do this? So we've gotten a question, I would love to implement a solution like a Betterworks, but how do I get, because this affects everyone in the company if you do it right, how do you get buy-in? To deploy, especially right now, they're saying if budgets aren't huge, how do you get buy-in across the company to support something like this?
It's interesting that question comes up. This was the easiest investment that I've made in a long time, because when you're going through a transition, again, at the risk of dating myself, whether it's 2001 or 2009, or in this case, the first global pandemic in over 100 years, that represents an opportunity to, once you get through kind of the reflection stage of understanding what does this mean to me, and then you can look internally on, what will I change as a result? I mentioned, the marketing team went from doing a lot of in-person events to everything's virtual, and suddenly targeted marketing and accounts-based marketing is more important than it ever had been. You have a chance to reimagine as a company. How will you come out of this even stronger and leverage the current situation that you're in to rebound in a way that puts you ahead of any competition that you have in the market? To me, that's exactly what we're talking about with objectives, key results, after you've done that kind of work inside your company. So to me, this was one of the easiest investments that we've ever made, because we see it as helping to drive differentiation for our company. Our employees are our most important assets, and we have an amazing team inside of my company, and this is helping everyone to get aligned to go faster.
Great, thanks. Let's see, another question. So it kind of ties to the last one, but it says, what are your most frequent challenges with regard to justifying the additional time and effort to establish OKRs, check-in, measure product in the midst of such a time-intensive, time?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I think OKRs aren't something that you are superimposing on people to do in addition to what they already do. It's gaining clarity and allowing everyone to be completely aligned at the top level all the way down. So people want to be aligned to what your leaders are trying to drive. It's just not always clear. It gets lost in the noise. And so when there's times of uncertainty, in my experience, your employees need more transparency and clarity than they ever have. Otherwise, they're gonna do the best they can, working out of their home with 100 pieces of information coming at them. So I think, from my perspective, being aligned here around objectives, key results is more important now than ever. And so for me, just sharing that within the organization, both my leaders and the people that I'm peers with, is fairly straightforward to roll it out. Ironically for us, our HR team had an initiative already around this that I actually didn't know about, so it allowed us to come together and work on this project together.
That's great. That's great. And you're hearing it more and more too. It's like you're needing to spend more time on communication because everyone is so remote and distributed.
Yeah, so there's no hallway conversations right now where you can just wander past and say, oh, just a minute. And you can't catch up in one-on-ones at the same rate that you're used to. So anything you can do to drive automation, I think, is really important.
Great. Okay, we have time for one more question. Here's, how do you think about setting OKRs that are table stakes to drive everyday value versus stretch goals to create additional value?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's actually, I think, one of the most important areas to work on. And honestly, you won't get there the first time around, because employees have been trained through MBOs to set goals that you can easily surpass. So what I did personally is I set lofty goals for myself to lead the way, and then that naturally translates into everybody's got to have at least a couple of components around that. But I also, in the early days, asked to see everybody's goal. And I pushed back a little bit to say, gosh, that doesn't, 10% increase in web traffic, is that really aspirational right now when everybody's on the web? So I think it's a combination of, challenging each other and then just making sure people understand that it's okay to fail, because that's a key component. Nobody wants to fail. I think
how do you address that if they don't hit their OKR and they feel like they're, failing publicly? Is there advice? Because I've gotten that even from my team, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, people don't like to fail, that's for sure. I think it's just all about calling it out and just saying, hey, it looks like we fell a little bit short. What happened? What can we do differently this next quarter? And not penalizing people, but being part of the solution to help solve for that. I think that culturally needs to be in every organization. So we're here to help, as leaders, we're here to serve, and we're here to advise, and we're here to support. So how do we help people to understand? And maybe it was too aspirational. That's okay. Then how do you find some kind of middle balance next time versus going all the way back to what was, clearly a layup and nothing special at all?
Well, I love this comment. It's not failing, it's learning, right? And creating that culture of learning. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're just about out of time, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to wrap up with any key thoughts or anything like that.
No, I appreciate everybody spending time with us today. I do think, going through this time, we are all here to help each other. And I am passionate, as you can tell, this idea, the employees inside of our company are the most important asset we have, and yet they don't always know what's in our head, and especially now, because we can't walk around and meet people like we used to. I don't think there's ever been a more important time to harness the real power of your company, your employees, to help drive change, so that when we all come out of this, and we will come out of this, we will meet again in the future and come back to offices, that the companies, your organization and my organization is more powerful as a result. So I really appreciate everybody's time today. And thanks for having me here, Luanne.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for your insights. And we really appreciate your time. Have a great afternoon.
Great. You too. Goodbye, everybody.